Ina, can I have the background slide? Good afternoon, everyone. I think most of you know me. I've been working with you as the lead person for the Institutional Development and Innovation Grant. And I'm very happy to note that most of those who attended are indeed tied up with us because of this program. So we have participating institutions from all over the country, from Mindanao, Luzon, and Visayas. And most of them have been supported by the internationalization program component of the Institutional Development and Innovation Grant of the K-12 program. And we have representatives from the Canada 15 who are here, who just presented their own strategic development plan for internationalization in Cebu. And I see representatives from Mindanao integrating internationalization in their own institution. The internationalization agenda of the Commission on Higher Education for the country is encapsulated under policy framework and strategies on internationalization of Philippine higher education under CHED Memorandum Order number 55, series of 2016. And in that memorandum order, it has adopted the JNOIC definition for internationalization. I'd like to share with you, as part of that framework, is the desire of the Commission to be able to encourage internationalization at home. What we mean is that most of Filipinos would not be able to afford going overseas, participate in cross-border education, but internationalizing our programs at home will open up many opportunities for these students to increase their capacity and competitiveness by infusing internationalization in programs that are offered right here in your respective institutions. And this is what we see in the long term for the 10 universities that are participating in the Joint Development Niche Program to be able to open up, attract inbound students in the country. Therefore, offering these programs not only for Filipinos, but the Philippines as an ASEAN hub through internationalization programs born out of the JDNP. The Institutional Development and Innovation Grant of the K-12 has been so designed such that while we provide grant to individual institutions, their commitment to the Commission is to be able to radiate their learnings to other institutions that are within their sphere of influence. Therefore, we create avenues for sharing their learnings and experiences. For this afternoon, this is how this particular panel discussion had been so designed. We have chosen the institutions that have been introduced earlier to not only share the programs that they have developed through the JD&P, but share with us the experiences and learnings that they have met in the journey of developing the program and developing the institutional partnerships. Hello, how are you? You know, when we started the program 1.5 years ago, we brought the 10 universities to the UK. And I never experienced how to speed date myself, but we created a speed dating scenario where Philippine universities would be able to meet prospective partners. There were universities who already knew who they were looking for when they went to the UK. And therefore, the search for a partner was easy. But for the rest, it was the first time that they were meeting their partners, and they had to meet everybody and finally make their choice. And so, friends, we would like to ask you the first question, and this question is for everybody. But perhaps we could start with Bicol University and Liverpool, then Silliman, then we have Silliman and Newcastle, even if your partner is not here yet. Then we'll go to St. Louis University and Coventry, and finally the University of the Philippines and the University of Reading. You have been given the question beforehand, so let me just read for the purpose of sharing it with our audience. The first question asks us to share what are the shared strengths and values of your respective institutions that influence your decision to come together. In effect, what did you have? What did you want your partner to share with you? And what were the key decision-making points that made you decide, it's finally you? So let's start with Bicol University.
Hello, good afternoon. Helen Llenaresas of Bicol University. I am very happy to inform the group that we have selected one of the best institutions in the UK. Our partner is the University of Liverpool. Just like Bicol University, Liverpool shares with us the values, that of advancement and education, and also making use of this type of education for social transformation and development. We have finally decided to partner with Liverpool because of their expertise along the course which we intend to offer as a double degree program, and that is MS in Sustainable Food System. They have the experts, we have the experts, and we really feel that if we work together, we will be able to offer to the community, not only to the Bicolanos, but to the Filipinos, a course that is unique and at the same time the need of the times. Of course, that's the importance of a sustainable food system cannot be underscored by anyone. So I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Edwards?
Okay, thank you. I agree with all of my colleagues and new partners' comments about the relationship. At Liverpool, we have very intensive and high-level teaching activities, but we're also a research-intensive university. And we get many requests to partner and to develop collaborative vision around the world. And we always have to ask ourselves a few questions as to, shall we go ahead with this new relationship, and how would we benefit from it? And I'm not an administrator, I'm an academic. And when I'm involved in setting up new partnerships, I ask the question, how could this relationship benefit me or my research? Or how could it benefit my students? And while the administrators will say, how will this benefit our budgets? I ask myself different questions. And I'm sure Professor Martin Mortimer, my colleague who's sitting in the audience there, would agree that when we were approached about this opportunity, we thought this was very exciting because it was in an area where we had great strengths, but also great ambitions to enhance our global footprint in terms of tackling this big global problem of sustainable food systems. And we saw immediately opportunities to develop our research alongside these postgraduate programs. And we also knew that the expertise in these areas that we were with our partner universities was complementary to ours. So it looked like an ideal match in terms of our expertise and our ability to develop new ideas and new research projects in this important area. And we did not have, at that time, have any collaborative provision or any TNE in the Philippines, although we had in other parts of Southeast Asia. Professor Mortimer himself actually worked in the Philippines in IRI, in the International Rice Research Institute, so again was very familiar with systems and processes. And from my teaching perspective, if you like, this was a fantastic opportunity, I thought, for our students to spend, if not time being taught here, but time experiencing the Philippines and experiencing the facilities, the research stations, the natural environment that are present here. And as we heard before the tea break, it's very difficult to persuade UK students to travel abroad. But if you ask them to come and do research or take part in research activities, they really enjoy them and value those activities. So in essence, when we look at, of course, we have to judge quality assurance and reputational risks, etc. But for this particular partnership, it was the opportunities for us to benefit as academics, as members of staff, and as students from this partnership.
Very well said. I was just curious to call Professor Mortimer to join us in the stage. Professor Martin is coming from the Faculty of Agriculture Ecology and was also representing the University of Liverpool. Professor Martin, if you would like to add what Steve said?
I'm merely Steve Edmonds' shadow. But I will say just one thing. At Liverpool, we recognise that food security, global food security, was immense importance, but it was more than just producing more to address hunger alleviation, which of course is immensely important. But if we look at the achievements with the MDGs and now the SDGs, the world is moving towards hunger alleviation by increased productivity. Not successfully and not completely. But the other side to food security was the whole of food systems, which go from farm all the way through supply chains to what the consumer does. And we are looking at a global epidemic at the consumer side of what are called non-communicable diseases associated with bad eating. I speak that rather bluntly, but I'm talking about excesses, let me put it like that. So there are big issues about how we develop a sustainable food system that is healthy for us as human beings, but is also healthy for the planet and for the environment. And so we recognise in Liverpool that we have expertise in different areas that need to be brought together to address in a very interdisciplinary way sustainable food systems for the future. And we were lucky in some ways that we got a group of academics together who were prepared to work together in a truly interdisciplinary way. And we also found a lot of common interest here in the Philippines with Bicol University and with Central Luzon State University and with others I'm hastening to add, which we're very keen to talk with. And so we've had this great opportunity to look at how you plan a new master's program, looking at this in an interdisciplinary sense, and to actually say, well, we've actually got to think quite broadly in a way to bring on new students who are going to influence the future of our supply system. And of course food, as we all know, is very much an international commodity, so it has major implications. So that's really what I want to say in terms of the background of where we come from. The interest that has come from Bicol or from CLSU has been enormous, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's a bit too long to talk at the end of the day. It gives a little bit of background to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. We'll get back to you. So indeed, Bicol University was looking for expertise in the discipline that they're interested in. And as Steven said, they were also looking for partners that would enrich their interest in research that would benefit both faculty and students. And the meeting ground for both of them is the food systems and food security. So that's for Bicol University and the University of Liverpool. Let's go now to Dumaguete with their delicious Sans Rival. And we have Jane here and Madame Hilda to talk about their partnership with Newcastle.
Good afternoon. We chose Newcastle University because we have a shared quest for Christian education. That's a strength for Silliman University. But with Newcastle, they were also for quality education. We also had a strong interest in research and environmental and societal well-being, which is actually being addressed by Newcastle University in their programs. So because of that, with our Christian orientation and the advocacy for societal and environmental advocacy and well-being, we decided to get together and form this joint program, dual degree.
Yeah, it's obvious I'm not from Newcastle. Our partners send their apologies. Dr. Nick Poloyan, who is our focal person, just got back from surgery, and Dr. Alison Tate from the international office. We just completed or finished our negotiations on the memorandum of understanding, which has just been signed. Well, to answer the question, also to reinforce what Jay was saying, among the areas that were priority areas for TNE partnership, as put forward by Chet, oceanography was one of those. And as you know, Silliman University is a leader in marine and coastal ecosystems and research. And so it is no surprise that when Dr. Alcala, who is a national scientist and father of marine protected areas in the Philippines, together with Dr. Malayang, who is a wildlife management person, our president, went to the London conference, he zeroed in on Newcastle, where they have active research in marine. And apart from that, we have had a previous link with Newcastle in the 1990s. It was a British Council academic link program with a Center of Tropical Coastal Management. It has a different name now in Newcastle. And with that program, Silliman had technical assistance with Newcastle in terms of formulating the first postgraduate degree in coastal resource management, which we now offer as a ladderized program with certificate, diploma, and Masters of Science in coastal management. And so we do have a previous engagement. Our scientists have always been in touch with the kind of research that they are doing. And when we got together for the planning session, we decided that it would be beneficial for both institutions to have this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, the common theme is on a shared value on how their philosophy for education is shaping a common interest on marine and ecosystem. But here is a case of two universities who were working previously, but for one reason or the other, had cut ties and had not met each other for a long time. And I think this is where the British Council and CHED make the BFF become forever. So previous relationship being picked up again, and I think that was important. So when you went to UK, you did not have eyes for anybody. You simply look for, where is this Newcastle, isn't it? Okay. So we go now to the next university. We said St. Louis University and Coventry. How was it with you?
We hadn't met previously, so it was a blind date for us. One of the things, Coventry was a former polytechnic. We came to university back in 1992, and we've always had a strong link to our local neighbourhood, our local region, in terms of delivery of relevant courses. Since then, we've really grown our reputation within the UK. One of our great strengths is our teaching quality and the emphasis we place both on the student experience and gaining employment for our graduates when they succeed with us. when we were speaking with St. Louis, we had a number of shared values. One was about the relevance within the local region and to provide the training and the education that's required locally and then nationally. A second aspect was the need to provide professional accreditation. It's something that all of our courses within Coventry, if it's relevant to the course, then we expect our course teams to develop and achieve professional accreditation. And so one of the first things we found out with talking to Cynthia, who's next to me here, is that she had just been tasked with a rather large project to take all of their engineering courses through the ABEC system to achieve that. And again, it gave us that confidence that we're heading in the same direction. The third thing was that simply from the disaster management, if we go back to the content of the course, is we've had an established disaster management course for about 30 years now. It grew out of civil engineering. It was very much an engineering-focused course when it first started. But now it's much broader now. It includes a range of different disciplines, including those across the health sciences and the social sciences. And once we started speaking to our potential partner at that stage, we're talking through about the need to develop an interdisciplinary course team. We're helped very much by the Vice President of Academic Affairs at SLU, Jerry Beglin, who's in the audience, to bring together the relevant expertise from across each university. And for those who've worked in the university sector for a number of years now, breaking down borders inside your institution can often be as challenging as working internationally. So to see that we could get a fairly rapid response to, within a matter of, by the time we first met, we had an interdisciplinary team of willing volunteers from the healthcare, from nursing, from the social sciences, the humanities, as well as civil engineering and urban planning. That gave us reassurances that we could actually develop the MSc curricula and the program that we would aspire to develop. We have aspirations for in terms of its quality, its relevance, its professional recognition, and eventually the value it will provide in terms of the graduates when they start working in the Philippines. Thank you, Wanda.
Okay, and Cynthia?
Good afternoon, everyone. What we have in partnership with Coventry University is not only for the Masters in Disaster Risk Management, as we have been discussing over the past months. We're looking also into the validation of our undergraduate degrees. And this is one way to sustain the program, because we know that the master's degree is expensive. But for us to be able to sustain it, we're also looking towards validating some of our engineering degrees. We live in far north of the Philippines, and this is a disaster-prone area. And so it is but proper or appropriate that we offer the Disaster Risk and Management Program. And we have already been to UK, some of us, professors in the future already went to Coventry, and we met with their professors, and we find them very accommodating in terms of their availability in providing training and education to the faculty members who will be handling this in St. Louis University. So in May, which is the target, Coventry University will be flying in some of their external auditors in order for them to validate our program. And so we would like that because if we are towards internationalization, we would want that our program will be at par with our partner university in UK. So we are ready for the launching of the MS-VRR in August, and we are preparing for the validation coming, and hopefully we will be able to get this. So in terms of preparation, so we already have an exposure, and we are preparing all the documents that would allow us for the validation process. So we're getting well with our partner. Nigel is so helpful with us, and we know that he is going to be on our side in terms of preparing all what we will be needing in preparation for the launching in August of the TNE. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the common thread between the two of you is the reputation of your institution and the quality of the programs that both of you. But friends, the relationship of these two universities is quite unique from the rest of the 10. The program is so designed by St. Louis University, and the quality assurance that this will be a world-class program offering is through the validation of that this program meets UK standards through Coventry. Now we go to the University of the Philippines, and we have Dean, Dong, and Ashley. So the same question, Dong, what were the shared strengths and values of your respective institutions, and what influenced you that it's you together in this journey?
Yeah, before I mention the shared values, I think the partnership is like an arranged marriage.
An arranged marriage. And our matchmaker here is Chad and the British Council.
Yeah, I think I must thank the chair in the British Council for making that arrangement. The perfect arrangement. It was love at first sight. Well, personally, I didn't go to Reading, but Assistant Vice President Elisa Lampa went to Reading, joined the CHED British Council delegation a year ago. And, well, she was part of the delegation that went to Reading. And, well, she was describing us both, and when she met us to convene a group. And, well, she described that, well, Reading is just like UPLB. You have mountains and fields and cows and dairy farms and all that. Yeah, perfect. It's a perfect map. And so we were listening to her and okay. And the shared value, I think, is the value to make our programs more inclusive. UPL's program is niche program is agriculture and environment, providing food for the people through the research that we do, that our faculty and researchers to innovative programs that really would find solutions to poverty, to food hunger, and to ensure food security. I think that really made the magic. We examined Reading's reputation. In the field of agriculture, Reading is number one in the UK. And I think that started the ball rolling, and we examined the programs. Really, the innovative program that we offer, we have the PhD by research program. We implemented this 25 years ago. And when we examine the curriculum, the research programs, I think that perfectly matches the arrangement. So our value for our shared value for providing food for the table through our research in agriculture and food systems.
Okay, Ashley.
Just to agree with Dean Dong and everything he said, but also I think it was the commitment to quality teaching, learning and research at EPLB that really attracted Reading. We've got many common research areas, so many in fact that a PhD by research is perfect because it can be flexible under the umbrella of agriculture. So we're really excited. We've got lots of professors already talking for supervision. We've got students that are excited to study the program. So it's just a perfect match for us.
Okay. I was just taking notes. And in this particular discussion point, I think the lesson that we can withdraw here, Beckett State University was already asking earlier if there would be future programs of this kind. And I think as far as the CHED and the British Council is concerned, it would be good to have already a list of potential partners, international partners for Philippine universities to facilitate, just in the word of the officer in charge, Commissioner Rivera earlier, that the role of CHED here is to facilitate, as long as to facilitate the partnership development. And we know the direction of the higher education institutions in the Philippines through their strategic plans, and therefore it would facilitate to have ready list of schools where they could choose from to facilitate the the identification of potential partners. So now we go to the next question, and we'll begin with the last universities that answered. So this would be answered by the University of the Philippines and Reading, and St. Louis University and Coventry. This question goes, what were the processes that you had to go through in your respective institutions to make this partnership possible? And you may describe both the due diligence processes internally and how you had to adjust and adopt UK quality assurance processes.
Okay, thank- So at the University of Reading, we have two types of approval. One is the partnership, and that involves a lot of due diligence at the beginning of the institution itself, and their standing, the quality assurance processes they have, and also the country level processes, how the governance works, how they're monitored, working in the country itself. And so at Reading, that's done very early on before we get an MOU, so that we know that the institutional partnership will work. In terms of the programme's approval, because it's a PhD by research, we've worked very closely to make sure our regulations match, so the students will be supported through the dual programme, working out how supervision will work. So it's been a lot of consultation with the partner, with UPLB, and adjusting our processes to make one dual programme that the students can study. And that the approval process in universities, it goes through our Global Engagement Strategy Board, our University Programmes Board, and then final sign-off by our most senior board.
Okay, so as far as the University of the Philippines?
Yeah, the institutional processes, it's both easy and difficult. Easy because the University of the Philippines system has already established an environment for internationalization to take place. The last presidency of President Pascual, he established the Office of Institutional International Linkages. Our Assistant Vice President, Dr. Aaron Villeras, is here. The administration put a lot of money in internationalization efforts. But having said that, this made things easier for us. Institutions matter. We have to put in place the agencies, the organizations, the people, the right mindset and perspective. But here comes the more difficult area, and that is, well, we have the processes. Because just like in any marriage, we have to know each other. The due diligence would come in terms of we have to examine the requirements. For example, the admission requirement for PhD research in UPLB would be 3 publications, 3 lead or sole or senior authorship. But for the case of UK, there's no publication requirement. So how can you harmonize that? That's, for instance, is one big barrier. If in the first place we can no longer agree, how can we proceed? Well, and therefore we have to examine processes, harmonization of policies. But to make the message short, we have to undergo 12 levels of approval. 12 levels of approval, starting from the department, up to the institute, up to the college, up to the graduate faculty, up to the graduate academic advisory council, executive committee, curriculum committee, university council, academic affairs council, residential academic, and so on and so forth, and finally up to the board of regents. And we still have 3 more to hurdle. So you can see the quality assurance. And if in the first place you're already impatient, and reading at Reading's academic policies, mind you, they're mind-boggling, but good that we have the Skype now, we have the emails, and so where's Anna? We had appointed the right person who has the patience to talk to the right people. This requires a lot of processes, time, to study the regulations, to study our regulations. Does this regulation match the regulation? Where's the compromise? See, for instance, in the requirement for graduation, our requirement is to publish 3 lead authorship in international journal. But for Reading, you only require none, no publication. So how do they harmonize this? So, and so when we present this to our academic councils, some professors would, would disagree and say, why should we lower our standards? You see? So how do you harmonize this? In other words, we let the faculty co-own the process, co-own the program, and talk to them, communicate. You have to appoint people who are really patient in explaining to faculty that you are the best faculty who can be involved this and that and so on.
Okay. Yes, indeed. So every month we have learning sessions among the 10 participating universities. And Dean Don Camacho would always say, 10 steps, 10 steps. And now you have only 3 remaining to do. That's good. Okay, so let's move to Baguio and go back to Coventry and State Blue University. So Cynthia, can you tell us what you had to go through to make this partnership a reality?
When Nigel was mentioning about the quality assurance process, that we will have to go through the validation process, initially we never understood what he was trying to point out. We keep questioning, Nigel, what is that 1.3 million? Was the composition of that? And we never understood, not until we went to Coventry, and this was discussed to us fully as to why we have to go through the quality assurance process of Coventry. And so we are now subjecting ourselves for the quality assurance. We have discussed this very well, what we will have to submit as the first step. We need to submit the documents for the due diligence, and after which, if we pass that, then some people from Coventry will be coming over to St. Louis University to validate. The process is quite difficult because, of course, even if SLU is accredited for some local accreditors.
And an autonomous university.
Yes, an autonomous university that regulated as well, deregulated as well. There's a different way by which quality assurance is being undertaken by Coventry University. And we will have to go through the process. We cannot question, but simply to say yes to whatever they would want us to go through in relation to this. And so the learning process here is that when we just understood it at the latter part of our visit to Coventry, we now appreciated the fact that we cannot deliver the program as a dual degree, not until we've passed the validation.
Internally, before you pass it to Dr. Nigel, internally, if you have noted in the process of the University of the Philippines, they had to go through interinstitutional processes. Was this also true to St. Louis University? What internal processes did you have to go through?
It's also true for St. Louis University. We have been discussing this with the Vice President for Academic Affairs, and he said that we really have to go through the process. First, we comply with whatever initial documents that we will have to produce. In fact, we have it with us now that Nigel is here. Before he goes home to Coventry, then we will have to discuss that document.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Just a few comments really to add to that. We follow the QAA, Quality Assurance Agency processes, which Reading and all the other UK institutions need to comply with. Part of that is new to the Philippines, and so I think that talking to my colleagues now in St. Louis, it's a learning process which leads to organisational change. And likewise, when we're talking to our colleagues at St. Louis about their processes, we see this as, again, looking at organisational change and strengthening our resilience to work in different parts of the world with different partners. If I give just a couple of examples, the role of the external examiner within exam boards, is something which we were not familiar with, and yet we see that as being one of our benchmark, our hallmarks of the quality assurance process. In terms of the early stages of due diligence, it's not just about the reputation in itself, is that sufficient? It's things like financial due diligence, ethical clearance, which particular markets and which particular countries and which particular sectors that institution is most associated with, and does that meet our values within Coventry? There are situations, for example, at the moment, I'm sure other universities are doing the same, is talking to institutions in Myanmar, and some of the issues there are raising concerns by our university. And universities in the UK traditionally are quite risk averse. And getting decisions made, as we understand, is through multiple layers. And all it takes is for one layer to be a little bit slow or a bit sluggish to slow things down, and things can be delayed quite considerably. The plus side is that working with St. Louis and their autonomous status gives us a little bit more flexibility to be able to adapt our processes to their needs and vice versa. Things such as documentation not need to be replicated. We can use a single standard set of forms which we just agree on, rather than having to have separate sets of documentation the whole time. This just speed things up and make it easier within Coventry to get documentation through the system. Without that, I just know from experience, it takes a lot longer because you constantly have to translate from one system into another system. But we're able to come to a common agreement very quickly. Other areas of interest is the output, the exit qualification at the end. The UK would normally at the master's level look for a PG cert, a PG diploma, a postgraduate certificate, a postgraduate diploma, and then the MSc. Whereas within the Philippines, my understanding is that it's a single exit qualification of MSc, rather than these fallback awards. It's just by having these conversations that we're learning about how you design programs in different parts of the world to meet the local need and what is expected locally. And it does take time early on, and that was really, I think, the first set of conversations were very much focused about setting this framework in place. Now we really have been developing this over the 10 months now, since we first started working on the project together, with a view to completing that in May, June time, when we had the validation event. And alongside that, in parallel, we've been running the curriculum development and the staff development side of things, so that Coventry and St. Louis feel confident in each other's ability to deliver the program once it's been approved.
Okay, thank you. In the journey that we have undertaken with these 10 universities, what we were so happy about is because they did only go through the quality assurance process to elevate the standards or meet the standards of their UK partners. But in the process, they were also adapting certain best practices that have been observed from these UK universities to first improve the ability of our graduate students to finish graduate work, and at the same time, adopt certain measures for faculty members to continuously have professional enhancement program as they deliver graduate programs to become better mentors to graduating students. Unfortunately, not in the 4 universities here, but is there a representative? Can I ask a representative from the University of Santo Tomas? Malu, are you here, present? They have, Malu, for example, the University of Santo Tomas had adopted a training program for applicants to the TNE, to the proposed TNE programs to facilitate admission of these applicants, because the criteria and qualification standards is difficult by itself. But UST, as modeled by their partner university, had adopted, also with the University of Reading, have adopted certain programs, both for their faculty and their graduate students, as I said, to facilitate their graduate work, and at the same time improve the mentoring of faculty. And so, friends, earlier this morning in the press conference, we were asked what were the criteria that were adopted in choosing the universities from the Philippine side. And the first criteria for private universities is their being autonomous. They're being autonomous by virtue of CMO 62 series of 2016. They do not need any more government recognition. But nevertheless, their being autonomous, embedded in their respective institution, is a strict internal quality assurance processes in itself. And I think that's where the trust between the Commission on Higher Education and the honor bestowed to these Philippine HEI to be named as autonomous universities, that we trust them, that they have both institutional processes as well as the next level complying with country standard, just like what Ashley had said. So that's the question number 2. And so for those who would like to go through this academic partnership, I think that's a very good insight, that in order to meet external partner standards, we must also ensure that within our own respective institutions, we have that kind of internal quality system to ensure our own program quality offering. So we go to the next question. And we'll begin with Helen over there and Liverpool. Developing the program involves the faculty level, and this is the multi-layer Ashley was talking about. Developing the program involves the faculty, the department level, and in both of these, at the institutional, at the department and faculty, there were adjustments that had to be made by each of you. Can you give us an insight of what you had to make changes or adapt because of the cultural differences?
Yes, in Bicol University, we submitted the programs to institutional processes. We started with a presentation of the program to the stakeholders. We called for different sectors in the community, and they were able to give inputs to the program. And then from there, we submitted it, of course, to the colleges, the department. And then there were, again, inputs from the faculty members of the particular colleges involved in the program, after which it had to go through the clearinghouse of the academic council, then the academic council until it reached the board. And for Bicol University, and I think for CLSU, we had to go to comply with CHED requirements. So that means that we have to submit it to CHED so that it can be endorsed to our Board of Regents. Afterwards, after it was approved by the board, we have to go back to CHED to comply with the COPC requirements before we can finally offer the course. So in the process, we have invited our partners, Professor Steve and Professor Martin. They were very kind to help us out in the process. They sat down with us in, I think, 2 instances, and we prepared and we evaluated. They gave us insights, and then to be able to cope with the standards of the University of Liverpool, they gave us short lectures, and we called on our faculty members and our experts, and then we had to come up with a set of actually, we had to decide on the course content. And then the objectives, the OBE, outcomes-based objectives. And then finally, after several sessions and critiquing, we sent the same to our partners in Liverpool for them to comment on. And then we incorporated again the comments in the revisions of the curricular offering and in the content specifically.
Okay, so were there adjustments that the university had to do to meet the expectations of your partners?
Yes. One of the major adjustments that we have had is on the number of hours that we have to devote on the research aspect. Because in the university, our thesis writing is simply 6 units, but that's not the way it is with our partner university. So 50% of the total number of hours, we actually added more hours to the research, gave it an equivalent units, more units to be able to come up with the demands or the standards to be at par with the standards of our partner university. So basically, only 50% would be devoted to the academics, and a lot of it will be on the research aspect. But we have learned that with our partner, they don't even require, just like the other university, Reading University, they did not even require publication. But we have to make sure that in the process, the research undertaking of the students who are enrolled in the program are really very good and meets the standards of UK education.
Just one more question, Helen. When you presented this to the faculty, there are about, let's say, 300 members of your academic community. What was the reaction to this new program?
Yes, of course, our faculty members, we are very happy because they appreciated the program very much. Earlier I said it's really one of the needs of the region, that's on food sustainability. And then it's not entirely a new program for them because we have our College of Agriculture, and we also have similar programs, and fortunately we also have the expertise. So we tap our College of Agriculture and our College of Fisheries, that's Tobacco Campus, and we also have the College of Science to help us out with the programs. So we really did not find so much difficulty in pushing for the endorsement of the program to the Board of Regents.
Thank you very much. So let's go to your partner, Professor Martin.
Thank you, Helen. I'll just make a few additional comments, and then maybe I'll ask my colleague to elaborate on some of them. The first thing that we were involved with was actually recognizing that doing a dual award system would be much easier for both institutions. That recognized that there were very major differences in the way in which particular programs were put together and had to be harmonized. So the dual award system works very well for us. Having said that, because we were working across a number of traditional academic disciplines, we had to have good discussions about how we would develop particular programs and particular modules that were involved for the dual award. So we were involved with some extensive discussions about how new modules would be created with Bicol, and likewise new modules would be created at Liverpool, and to make sure that both sets of modules were aligned and allowed the students to develop in an appropriate academic way. Equally, we have to recognise that the research project for both of these awards is a key part of that training in the master's programme. And the cultural differences that the question referred to is about thinking about how do we approach particular research questions and solving them within a limited time frame. And part of that key training, I think, that we would hope to get out of this master's programme is recognising how you look at a big issue, a big question, how you break it down in terms of research methodologies, and how you actually attempt to answer that question, recognising that the training that is required in the master's programme is about research methodologies. Looking at it from the point of view of Liverpool and the fact that we have set up this new Centre for Sustainable Food Systems, this is across faculty, across institutions, across departments. Well, for those of you in academia, we all know that there's a tendency for watertight activities within faculties and within departments and institutions, and indeed in research groups. So one of the challenges that we've had to face in Liverpool is to actually break down some of those walls of what I call the silos of excellence, and actually get people to communicate more effectively together. There's a cultural difference within the UK. I suspect it's somewhat similar as well in Philippine universities as well. Perhaps I'll pass this to Steve quickly. Okay.
Dr. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. That was very polite, but we've had as many challenges within our university, as we have with our partners. Partly because, as Martin says, we are not just working within one department or even one faculty, but this program encompasses all three faculties of the university. Two things I want to just elaborate from what Martin said. One is that although these are dual awards, we want to try and integrate the programs more closely. And I think that's going to take us time to evolve that to a more integrated approach. For example, we wanted some shared modules that would be jointly taught between our institutions. That is a step far too soon for our university. But that will come, I'm sure. The compromise that we've had, and again we've had to get permission to do so, is the opportunity to have a single project or a project from the Liverpool Award done in the Philippines under Philippine supervision. And that again was the first time our university had been asked to do that. And that took some negotiating and a lot of work to enable that to happen. I'm pleased to say students now on the Liverpool Award have the opportunity to do a project in the Philippines, which I think is in the spirit of what we're trying to do, is to bring together two programs rather than have two programs running in parallel. But we want to integrate them more in the future, but I think that's a slow process for us to do that. The second thing I think that will be a cultural challenge will be the level of supervision for the project students. Because the projects now will be much more time limited. And I think also with the PhDs with the CLSU, I think the relationship between the supervisor or the supervisory team and the student will have to be a bit more managed, for want of a better word, than maybe currently in some of your institutions. And I know UPLB are looking at the role of mentors and supervisors in supervising research students. And I think again that's a path we're on. And I think that will be one of the outcomes of this program will be a different relationship in terms of supporting students through their research.
Okay, very well said. So indeed,